ladies and gents. Welcome in, welcome in. Come in to my lovely, warm workshop I have prepared for you. Take your time, enter. I will get rolling in a few minutes. Let's have a look, ski what's going on in the market in the meantime. Just looking at this other screen over here. Oh, a little bit of a sneaky reversal from the S&P 500. Little fresh high tickle and roll back over. Ooh, let's see what happens with that. What else we got? Same with Nasdaq. Small caps outperforming again. What a funny rip we've had from the Russell. It really come out of nowhere. That of course we've had pounds managing to keep onto those highs just about. Oh, a smidgen off those highs. Those yearly highs. Can it break through that 1.3 level? Gold trying to push to highs. USD JPY, the old EOD intervention that we had. Did that did that actually do anything? Time will tell. What else have we got? Cable. Talk about cable. Crude oil doing a lot. Crude oil has been off my radar for such a long time. It's just gets a bit boring at the moment. I don't know if any crude traders are in there. That range is just so tight for so long. Back to the old days when it was bidding up to almost 200 a barrel. Goldman came out, gave it 200 barrel price tag, which marked the top, and it rolled back over. Stocks wise, anyone trading the stocks? We've got Tesla trying to get back up to those highs. We've got Netflix, not so interested in that. Nvidia, there's some news on that popped through my dashboard earlier. I didn't look at it. I think it was something about an antitrust probe, but yeah, we'll see about that one. Roku. Oh, going to talk a little bit about Roku actually today, which will be different for many people. Bitcoin ripping, which is dragging up the old crypto plays, MSTR. Nike still getting battered. It tried to get a bid last week. It's just really struggling that. So anyway, we'll get started, guys, in about a minute or so. Who we've got in here? Got a few people in. That's good. That's good. That's good. Let me check everything is all good and under control, and we shall get rolling. Thank you for joining me on this Monday evening. Be obviously a lot of news at the weekend with obviously the blimmin' assassination attempts. Donald Trump markets didn't do a lot responding to that, which actually, if you look, there was a tweet from Chris Weston, Pepperstone analyst, head Pepperstone analyst, follow him, and Michael Brown as well. And one thing that was interesting was, hey, what's the market response? Donald Trump's expectation of winning went up. Whatever reason you saw that in the betting markets and all that things that track that type of thing. How did the market respond at the open? Very muted. So that gives an insight into perhaps, how markets want to be positioned, how markets are responding to this type of stuff. Okay, so let's get started in about 5 seconds, guys. I just want to double check everything is running as it should be. And I think we are good to go. I'm double checking, triple checking. I like to do that. That's a trader in me. Let's rock. All right, guys. Welcome. Okay. Where are we? So, talking today about using ChatGPT to identify macro themes and trends. I don't know. This is not going to be kind of. Most people here are technical traders. I get that, right? I get that. Most people listening to recording are technical traders. I understand that. However, this process and methodology will help you think of another use case for ChatGPT, I believe, anyway. And so even if this isn't your style and if this is kind of what you're trying to achieve in your trading, I think you'll like some of the stuff I cover. I really do. But you'll see how it can be add value. And the idea of these workshops, and we're in week 3 now, next week we've got the journaling and the coaching, kind of how to use ChatGPT as like a trading coach for you. So identifying some of the holes in your trading, how to improve that type of stuff. Week 5, of course, we've got Maxim with what lies ahead, the future of AI. So any really detailed AI questions, save those for him. But today, really, I think you're going to enjoy this one. I really do. So thanks for joining me. First of all, of course, I have to say, if I can get my mouse operating correctly, there we go. Of course, guys, trading with leverage is double-edged sword. I talk about this a lot, but I hope everyone gets it. your risk of loss is high, your risk of gain gets magnified. The both ends of the scale are really, really amplified when you're trading with margin. So just understand that, because things go wrong pretty quickly. And if you're sized inappropriately, something happens, some sort of breaking news happens, you're not prepared. Stops can help you to a certain extent, but just understand the game that we're playing and the rules, and some of the order types and the risks involved and all that type of stuff. I know that I think everyone listening to this is a Pepperstone client already, so hopefully you're familiar with the product that you're trading. If not, it's worth just pausing, double checking, going back and making sure that derivatives are right for you, spread bets, CFDs, etc. Okay, so where are we? Oh, I boosted that a second slide. It's interesting. Okay, before we begin, I have to, of course, again, remind you that we're not recommending any particular tool here. ChatGPT is the one I like to use. I'm just a trader who wants to share my findings with you. And we've got a 4-week, we've got 5-week workshop, one different workshop each week, 5 workshops in total. Public maths is not a strong point for me, but we're going to talk about loads of different things. If you're there for week 1, we'll cover those in a moment. We are now on week 3. We've got 2 more to go. But okay, we're using ChatGPT, or I like to use ChatGPT. There's others out there. Not recommendations to use one or the other. Gemini, Grok, Claude is the other one. There's plenty of others out there, and you guys have probably dabbled with them, maybe so. And actually, I've noticed that on some of the Gmail now, if you use Gmail, you get Gemini popping up and saying, "Hey, do you want to help write an email?" Which I don't want AI write an email. I want AI to help me with some trading stuff, but I can write my own emails, thanks. But anyway, we're going to get to a point where AI is. This is probably a question for Maxim. To get to a point where AI is running everything, and actually human touch becomes so valuable. If someone actually writes a human email, you're right at the bottom of it as written by a human, and people are like, oh, he actually took the time to write an email. Think about it. Who knows where we're going with it. Anyway, assume everything it says is wrong. I showed last week, if you remember last week, some big errors with ChatGPT. Double check everything. Don't rely on ChatGPT to make trading decisions for you, please. Gosh, that would be dreadful. And I'd like to include all the stuff that ChatGPT says, including the errors, including stuff, so you can see. Actually, last week when we were working through that trading idea and strategy on the DAX, we showed how it messed up in the beginning and was quite adamant. Hey, I've got this strategy that gave you 2,050 pips. I'm like, hang on a second, only 40 days. That's got to be pretty damn good. I don't even think the daily range was that. So, we showed how to kind of identify the error and come back from the error. Always check and verify. Of course, I'm not an expert. Maybe the guy week 5 Maxim is, but I'm just a trader. I've been trading now. If you don't know me, my name's Mark Holstead. Apologies for not introducing myself earlier. I think many of you do know me already. Trading since 2001-ish, 2001, 2, I forget where we are now, a couple of decades anyway. So I come from this perspective of, as a trader, how can this tool assist me? And each workshop I've done so far is identifying one use case. And so the idea is that it sparks an idea in your mind. You sort of say, that's interesting, Mark. Thank you very much. That's not very interesting. Thank you very much. Anyway, you grab the stuff that helps you. And if that helps you move forward and gets you ahead of the curve, ahead of the game, if that helps you just get a bit of a head start with this, I don't want to go on about this too much, guys, but I'm super bullish on how this can help us. Not necessarily AI stocks and stuff that's already been and gone. Actually, we'll talk about that in a moment. But just generally using these tools as traders, and I believe there's a window of opportunity where we can get ahead of the curve, we can get ahead of the crowd, the mob, and we can use these tools to really assist us with our trading. Find out some edge, discover some edge, help us improve as traders, reduce the risk, all the other stuff that comes in with being a great trader, trading psychology, all that other stuff. I think there's a good window of opportunity here. All right, so let's go. Week 1, reminder of the summary of week 1. We're going to kind of run through this formula of persona, context, task, input, format. That helps you get the best results. Ask additional questions. I think that's the biggest takeaway from that one, if I'm honest. Expect mistakes and show you how to correct those. Week 2 was cool. I really enjoyed week 2. Hope you did too. Feedback was good, so thank you, and I hope you enjoyed that one. Loads of rabbit holes to go down with there. We uploaded price data to ChatGPT. We downloaded it from TradingView. We generated a couple of strategy ideas actually from ChatGPT. And if you followed the strategy idea, the 3 to 4 p.m. DAX one, it's actually not been doing too bad. So we looked at themes, generated back tests and equity curves, and kind of. And one thing I think the biggest takeaway was, or one of the biggest takeaways I think that what I tried to kind of put across was They're actually thinking like a startup almost, in that we just test things. You spot something as a price action trader or technical trader, as someone who's a discretionary, or maybe you do some systematic stuff, but you're watching charts, right? You're observing, you're marking up with charts at the end of the day, you're sitting in front of the screen, you recognize an opportunity. And then the idea of that is you download the data of the market you're trading very simply, very easily. You upload it to ChatGPT and you say, hey, how effective is this? So it might be a little subtle thing of, hey, I feel like we kind of have a drive at this point in time, or after Europe closes, if we're away from the VWAP, we tend to magnet back to it, whatever that idea is. And then you ask ChatGPT to help you kind of quantify that, qualify that, generate rough back tests, making kind of hypothetical strategies and stuff. And it's really good. I think that this opens up the door for non-quants like me and maybe you to kind of ask things in normal language and kind of get some answers about the market you're trading. And even if you're a specialist in trading a cable, or a specialist in trading euro dollar, or especially in trading whatever it is, you can now interrogate ChatGPT and ask these questions in normal language that you wouldn't have been able to do before. Like, hey, how often after a X pip drive do we pull back Y pips? How often after moving this amount in an hour do we? You can just ask these questions, and hopefully, if you remember, I said, hey, listen, if you don't quite know how to ask ChatGPT, ask ChatGPT to help you. Ask ChatGPT; it will help you. Say, I'm trying to do this. Can you help me guide? Can you guide me on how best to use you to get this result? And we showed how to do that. So that was a really good week. Okay. And you had some homework. Let me know if you did your homework. I've got a few submissions, if you like. Your homework was this: come up with a trading strategy idea, extract and upload the data, test the data, analyze and discover something interesting. So if you did that, stick it in the Q&A. I don't know if the chat's open. The Q&A definitely is. Stick it in there. And by the way, if you have a question, you're welcome to use the Q&A. I'll get to it at the end, or if it's a quick question as we're going through, I will try and answer it. Actually, I'll do my very, very best to help you out with this. But like I say, I'm not the expert. I'm a trader who's using this as a tool and sharing my findings from that perspective. But I do know this: if I can't help you, and if I can't answer the question, I will direct you to someone or somewhere that can help you. I'll just leave you hanging. I'll say, hey, I don't know the answer to that. And I'll hold my hands up and I'll say, but I think this website will help, or this person will help, or whatever. So that's just the way I like to operate things. I definitely don't know everything, even though I've got a lot of experience in the markets. I don't have a big enough ego, or if I did have when I was a younger trader, it's definitely been battered down to say, listen, you got to be humble. You got to go with the flow. Sometimes things work very, very nicely. Sometimes they don't. That's cool. That's the way trading is. Okay, so what we've got here, a couple of things, submissions. Okay, this guy, he tested well, I assume it's a guy, is it a girl? I can't tell. Tested a moving average crossover strategy combined with a stochastic. Good. On what the results were from that. If you've got the results, put them into Q&A. Which market as well. So market, if you've got the market, that's super interesting. One person said I couldn't upload the data. Okay, we talked about that, and that happens, right? But if you're using the normal chat GPT, and again, a reminder, I use a premium. I think it's $20 a month, 23, $24 a month. I think it's worth getting, but up to you, of course. Maybe there's something to do with the free and premium. I don't know, but all the examples I do is with the premium version. So I think that's 4.0 we're at now. So I don't know whether if you get different types of things with free. Maybe it's limited. Sometimes not so much anymore, but used to find sometimes that the server will be down or something will be down with OpenAI, and that's, I think, the problem from their end. So it might have been that. Otherwise, just try again. Get your CSV file, download it, stick it in, and try it again another time. Sometimes it can be a bit temperamental. That would be my suggestion with there. Tested the trigger candle. Testing the trigger candle. So the daily email. Oh, yeah. By the way, tradersmastermind.com/email. If you want to sign up for a daily email from me. The reason I say that is we had an email talking about the 7 a.m. candle on the DAX. I won't go over it. This trader said he tested that. That's cool. Use ChatGPT to look for the typical opening range for the first 15 minutes. Help to trade the ORB. Okay, so this trader used ChatGPT to identify what the expectation, I'm assuming the expectation was for the first 15 minutes of the market they trade. And the ORB trade, which is the opening range breakout, then helps you say, okay, has it gone too much? Has it gone too far? I guess they might have been trading the 5-minute ORB actually, and then closing after 15 minutes and working out. That's a typical extension. I'm going to come out of that. That's good. Two more: typical distance away from the VWAP, and Pine Script Wizard. So I think that's again, no affiliation, no recommendation. I think that's we talked about building indicators last week, so very simple ones, nothing complex. I think this is like a GPT. So a GPT is when you can pre-program the ChatGPT to say, "Hey, I've already given you some guidance, so you don't have to write that formula again," and that kind of guides you through. So I don't know. I've not checked that one out. No affiliation and stuff. Maybe it's a GPT or a website. Anyway, another one here. Uh, this was I did an intraday seasonality DAX chart. A chart. Sorry, I did an intraday seasonality chart DAX over S&P 500 as a pair in Collab. A big plus Gemini on Collab can mark GPT's homework. All right, that sounds cool. Cheers, Chris. So you know what? This the beauty of this is the imagination is just you can just do what you want, and you can say, "Hey, listen, show me this, show me how I kind of want to." Like the other day, the spread between Russell 2000 and the S&P 500 just ripped completely, didn't it? We had S&P, sorry, we had IWM, which is Russell, just ripping. We had S&P 500, and it was kind of a massive break in structure between those two, and that might spur you on to say, actually, let me upload that. Let me see if this is a tradable opportunity. Can I be shorting IWM after a few days run? Can I be then buying SPY as a hedge? There's all these type of different ways of trading, and you kind of just explore. Honestly, the big takeaway is really just to explore stuff. Okay, so this week, this is a fun week, right? And like I say, I'm going to a few times mention this in the slides, but I think this is really interesting, and this is why I wanted to cover it. It's a different use case. We're away from the technicals for a moment. We're going to be back into the kind of thick of stuff with trading journals and identifying how to adjust and improve your edge, your own performance with ChatGPT next week. But we're going to get ChatGPT to be our kind of analyst, to be our research assistant, if you like. So we're going to learn how to decipher Fed speeches. Now, I did when I came through with this ideas and this workshop and kind of some of the stuff and content that I knew I wanted to cover. I mentioned this, but I'm going to be honest, the pie chart of how much we cover with the Fed speech thing is going to be very slim because it's very easy. More interesting is running through the trade ideas, so generating unusual trade ideas, having these kind of real world observations, so to speak, and coming up with trade ideas that maybe aren't yet discovered by the market. I'm just a market nerd. I'm a trading nerd. I love anything to do with trading, the markets. Obviously, why would you not if you've been in it for a couple of decades? So anything like this, I just find really enjoyable, and I think you do too. It's why you're on the call. So hopefully the stuff I share with you will be valuable, entertaining, and enjoyable. And if you're into the markets, you're into trading, I'm pretty sure it will. But even if you kind of go, maybe I'm not going to use this actually to identify strategy or edge, but it's cool. And I know now how to use that later on. And that skill that you've got from being here with me for now an hour and a bit, I think will be valuable to you. Okay, so filtering through the noise. Um, and again, actually, just one thing. I know some of you are quite experienced with this. Obviously, Chris quite experienced trying out different tools and playing around different things. So you can help if you want to add something into the Q&A, please do. Like I say, I'm definitely not the expert here, but I'm coming from the lens of reasonably experienced trader out there. How is this going to fold into the way I trade to support me? Okay, so ChatGPT is pretty good at summarizing large documents or PDFs, right? So you can chuck stuff into it, really technical term that, chuck your PDFs into it, Fed speech transcripts, earning call transcripts, financial statements, it's good at that, articles, white papers. We're going to go through, actually, just a kind of spoiler alert, we'll go through working out some trade ideas using Fed speech, earnings call transcripts, investor presentations, and we're going to, at the end, go through, find a trading strategy white paper, chuck that into ChatGPT. Yes, the terminology of chucking into ChatGPT, and then we'll come up with and kind of really extract some of the value from that. So that's kind of what we've got for this evening. So let's start off with Fed minutes. As I said, we would do this, but we won't spend long on this because why? I don't think. Listen, guys, we are small fish, big pond if we're playing this game. There are so many people out there who are identifying this, who are looking at the Fed, who are analyzing every little and R and this and that and changes in different language from here to here. And fine, that's not what we're trying to do here, but it's just a kind of proof that you can use it for this type of thing. So If you go to federalreserve.gov/monetary policy, you can download the Fed minutes. So last month we had, I think it was 11th of June, 12th of June, the FOMC minutes, right? So we're going to run through a kind of a real world example of how we start with a very, very broad approach, very, very macro, and then go down to something very, very tiny. And you might say, well, that's so far removed, it's almost irrelevant, but the process makes sense. The process will make sense. Okay, so we download the Fed minutes from the Federal Reserve website, and we give it kind of the context, we give it the formula, and we say, hey, you're an analyst working for a hedge fund. Your task is to help generate trade ideas for the traders, me. I want you to analyze this PDF, the recent Fed minutes, and summarize its contents. And it says, please upload the file. So there we go, download it as a PDF, and we throw it in. Okay. It now summarizes stuff. And I'm not going to read through everything. A lot of these screenshots as well, I'm not going to spend time and waste your valuable time reading through everything that's not that valuable. But on the summary, it kind of summarizes what it says. And it says inflation, it says labor market, it says GDP, it says about international, it says financial conditions, etc., etc. So we go, all right, fine. We probably already know that because if you're a trader, you probably kind of know what people are looking at. You know they're interested when the next rate cut is. You know they're interested in what the inflation number is doing. We kind of know as traders, even if we're not really into the thick of it, like perhaps some of the analysts at Pepperstone, that we understand what's moving the market. And that really is all that matters to a certain extent. Okay, so now I ask it to generate, I didn't, I asked it at the beginning to generate some trade ideas. Okay. And it comes up with broad ideas that you'd expect it to say. Trade idea one, long on tech stocks. Okay. And it says here justification. The FOMC minutes indicate that financial conditions have eased slightly and the market expects a potential rate cut by the end of the year. Anticipation of lower interest rates benefits growth stocks, particularly in tech sector. Rada, 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 rada. Hughes, NASDAQ. We know this. NASDAQ's had a bid for a long period of time. One of the reasons is obviously because of this. Trade idea two, short on long-term treasury bonds. Not my bag, not really interested in that. Maybe you're a treasury trader, but not for me. But long on tech stocks, that's a starting point. We've got several things we're going to do here, and we ain't just going to be buying NASDAQ, but stick around. So it then says a couple of trade ideas and then generates an unusual trade idea. Because don't forget, I prompted it. And I think that's, honestly, I think that's very, very key is always ask it for something unusual. I found that's like a lovely little chef's kiss keyword that just gives you something that you go, hmm. And again, then when you iterate and ask questions, you find even more cool stuff, right? So give me some unusual trade idea based on this data. Give me an unusual trade idea based on this earnings. Give me an unusual trade idea based on, unusual helps it go, I'm not just going to spew out the same stuff that everybody knows. Oh, well, I'm going to go long tech stocks when the Fed cut. Yeah, all right. That trade's been and gone, right? Well, okay, who knows? The market could rally on for another several years. Who knows when a bull market will end? But the point is, I like to just consider as a kind of a supply demand trader, as a trader who's not afraid to kind of trade against the crowd, as a trader who's not afraid to kind of look for that counter trend trade when it's coming into play. One of my setups I call a backdraft, where I kind of see that constant flush lower and then trade a 1 to 3 day reversal. So from my perspective, anything that's unusual, then I can kind of go, all right, well, let me think about that. Let me look at this. And by the way, maybe I should have kind of mentioned this before, but from a selfish perspective, why I'm doing this is we all know that if the Fed says something unusual or surprises in one way or another, how the market will respond. That trade's taken away from us the instant something comes out. The instant there's a inflation number that's higher than expected. Sometimes obviously all these things are counterintuitive, but the trade's taken away from us. Now, is there a subsequent trade that could develop from that? Yeah, there is. Like sometimes you buy that first pullback, sometimes you trade the flush. Fine, that's another technical trade you can peel into it. However, what I'm using this for, and kind of you'll see the process now, and we've got a couple of examples, is okay. So I might not be an investor per se. I might not be like buying something based on analysis ChatGPT's done, and actually you wouldn't do that anyway. But what it is doing is highlighting, and we'll get to this, it's highlighting where I can divert my attention. So if everyone is trading the NASDAQ, if everyone's trading the dollar, if everyone's trading gold when we have these big Fed announcements, I don't know how much I can compete. Now, I have some strategies and some setups that I will deploy under certain conditions, but a lot of the time, there's a lot of noise there. You know this, I know this. You see that when the response is very noisy, there's a lot of algos chopping things about, you can get chopped up. So One thing I like to do is think of the secondary or tertiary play, the second or third level plays that are going to respond to perhaps different views from the Fed or from different things that we'll go into. And so I can have them on my watch list. So I can say, everybody is going to this. I'm going to go to this. As a side note, let me go off piste for a moment. Something that I did worked very, very well many years ago, trading on the London Stock Exchange, was trading the shares on the London Stock Exchange, was trading a group of miners. So these miners, you had the top three miners, Rio Tinto, if I remember, geez, must have been 15 years ago, maybe not that long ago, Rio Tinto, Xstrata, and BHP Billiton. I think a lot of these have kind of uh, molded together now. But anyway, these three big boys were the ones that were moving. And it's a really active sector, right? Mining sector was so hot, just like AI is now. You always have these kind of cyclical nature of sectors. And everyone was trading these top ones. And I was like, listen, I don't think I can compete. I can't compete here, but I can compete if I go down the list and make a list of secondary miners that might be responding to this, but a little bit less liquid. And so the big players aren't going to play in this area, but I can play into it. So we had it was Kazakh Mies. We had I can't remember the names of them, but these secondary plays, and then these kind of tertiary smaller plays. And the idea being that actually, when we had some mining news, those three would just rip off because they're huge market caps, very, very liquid. And that's great from a liquidity perspective. But then the second tier would kind of be a little bit delayed, or they'd be stuck, or there'd be a little bit more edge there. Now, I'm not saying that's a strategy to deploy in this day and age, very different. But the similarity is, let me think outside the box. When everyone's heading to that instrument, when the market's doing this, what's the instrument that perhaps people are missing and perhaps might have a delayed reaction, or perhaps might kind of need something else to fold into it, which we'll look at in a moment, that might cause it to start to move. And then as a trader, if my job is to try to spot momentum, ignition, as quickly as possible, then now I've got a fundamental reason or a catalyst-based reason to start to look at this other market or this other stock or whatever it might be. As long as it's offered, obviously, by Pepperstone, which all this stuff will cover is, you can have it ready and be prepared, because not many people are doing this work. Everyone's just spouting off the same stuff that everyone's talked about, which is fine. But as a trader who's trying to generate good trade ideas and trying to execute good trades, I think sometimes we have to think differently. We have to step back and we have to observe. And now we've got the tool that helps us build a secondary watch list that we might be able to use from some of the big top tier moving data or macro data. And I've kind of gone off track a little bit, but you'll see what I mean as we start to do stuff. So that's why I'm doing this process. I want to come up with ideas and watch lists. And even if I day trade that vehicle, even if it's a 1 to 3 day trade, I don't specifically go out to kind of just take a 1 hour trade on it. I'll look to kind of, okay, if I close the highs and I'm long, maybe hold it for day 2, day 3. Obviously, you do your own, deploy your own strategy based on your own risk management, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I now know how to prepare and what I'm going to go to. And doing that preparation, again, if we go off track even more, is the separator. That's the separator, not necessarily this preparation, but just general prep. Like the average trader, if you look at the pie chart, they do 99% execution and 1% preparation, if that. If the trader that's actually had some longevity and doing okay, that pie chart's almost flipped. Like the work is put in before the trade, after the trade, the homework. That's when you can really focus your efforts and come up with ideas and strategy and deploy different ways of doing things, whether it's technical, whether it's catalyst based, whether it's news based, whatever it might be. And the execution then is the smaller part of it. And so that's just something to bear in mind as we kind of go through this. All right. So come back, Mark. Come back on track. Okay. Unusual trade idea, long on agricultural commodities. And it says this type of stuff. Not so interesting. Now let's do something that's a little bit more interesting. Okay. So we asked more questions. And I said here, I like the idea of going long tech stocks, but I feel they could be overvalued, especially stocks like Nvidia. And I don't know if it is overvalued or not. I'm just kind of hypothesizing with ChatGPT and saying, Nvidia's ripped a hell of a lot recently. Is there something else? Is there a smarter play out there? So it says, okay, additional considerations, mid-cap tech stocks. I'm like, all right. And it gives me an example of some mid-cap tech stocks. And one of them that flags up is Roku, provides a platform for streaming entertainment that has growth potential in the advertising space. Okay, so think what we've done so far. And very loosely, I appreciate this. We've gone, okay, Fed speech. We've gone, okay, could this is bullish for maybe tech plays, it's bullish for NASDAQ. All right. I like the idea of going long on tech stocks, but is there anything that might be a smarter play? And Roku looks interesting. So what I do is I punch up the chart, trading view, and this is my type of thing. Right? I'm not suggesting trade this at all. You do your own analysis and stuff, and I'm not suggesting I've got not no position on Roku at the time of doing this. Who knows? But I'm not kind of taught my book or anything here. But this is my type of chart in that it's beaten up. It could turn around. I don't know the story fully. I'm reasonably familiar with Roku, but assuming I don't know the story about it, it's kind of my wheelhouse, right? It's something that maybe comes along every now and then, and I like to trade this type of thing. So it could interest me. And even if you're not a trader of this, you can see how the process might help you if you're trading a currency pair, you're trading a commodity, etc. So I punch up the chart and I see that big gap down. And so rather than me digging into stuff, I just say, hey, the earning in February 24, the earnings, really hammered the stock, right? What was it? And it kind of came up with some reasonable example. And it's actually the forward guidance was really the big thing. Okay. And I say, well, so the forward guidance is, and I kind of ask it some more questions. Anyway, so I then say, okay, what sort of things should I look for? Because it says it's like to, given the previous significant stock drop due to disappointing guidance, the upcoming guidance will likely have substantial impact on Roku's stock price. Okay, so what sort of things can I look for? And it says going and saying pretty vanilla answer, to be honest with you. Okay, but so this isn't that valuable, but we're starting to get some more value, right? We're starting to find stuff that's reasonably interesting. So, and by the way, maybe I should clarify my thinking here. So my thinking now is, okay, so if we've got a rising tide from the Fed, and if we've analyzed this statement, which we might have already known that, appreciate that, we've got a rising tide maybe from the Fed policy and where that's headed. We've got a potential kind of bullishness on tech stocks. And by the way, we never take ChatGPT's word as gospel, but let's assume that we're doing and going through the process now. So we do that, and we say, okay, so what are the secondary stocks, second tier stocks, mid caps, whatever you want to call them, that might move? And I've gone through a few of them, and I want to see ones that are offered by Pepperstone. I also want to see ones that the chart's quite interesting. I don't want a copy of Nvidia, right? I've already said I don't want to trade Nvidia. I don't like buying at highs, right? And maybe you do, that's fine. But that, I want to find something that's maybe a bit unloved, that might get a bit of a bid. And I eyeball Roku and I go, okay, maybe let's dig further. So and the idea being that I can maybe position on this stock. I can use this stock as my immediate go-to plan if something changes with the Fed. I can also look and see if earnings is going to have an impact on it. I can kind of come up with trade ideas. This is a tradable vehicle. Can I be ahead of the game on this? Everyone else is missing out. Can I be ahead of the game and maybe position long and start to build up a position coming up into earnings? Obviously, you've got to be very careful holding over earnings. You kind of completely, you're punting away there. It's your decision to make. Just understand the risks that come with that. But I started to kind of, workshop in my head how I could potentially do this. And again, we're kind of using this as a hypothetical example, but hopefully you get the idea. So let's use ChatGPT's capability of being very good at dissecting and summarizing information, and head over to Roku.com, find the investors section, download a relevant PDF, which is normally an investor's presentation, an earnings call, or anything like that, and let's upload that to ChatGPT. And like I say, might not be your normal workflow, but you can see how this can, if you're a trader who likes to trade in play markets, whether that is Qs, whether that is stocks, whatever it might be. Maybe you're a little bit agnostic to the market. Maybe you specialize in one market, but actually you're happy to kind of look at different things. Then this kind of helps you build, maybe something to watch before everyone else, rather than just going what's the most active and sticking the things in the watch list that every other trader on the planet has got in. This helps you think about things that perhaps aren't yet in the spotlight. And we all know the key to kind of getting on momentum is to, the perfect world, we know it before it happened, right? Yeah, well, it'd be brilliant. We rub my crystal ball, but sometimes knowing that this is the tinder, and knowing actually if that spark hits it, I'm going to be early on it, and I understand the story behind it, I understand the catalyst, I understand the fuel, I understand the reasons. All of a sudden, I'm in a much better position to place a trade with more confidence. Okay, so back to the process. I download the PDF, I stick it into ChatGPT, and it kind of does a summary, and it says this is the Q1 2024 shareholder letter, blah, 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 blah. Okay. And this is interesting. Related stocks to watch. Actually, did I ask this? Yeah, here we go. I think I've skipped through a bit. I have a little bit. Okay. So I download ChatGPT, does its analysis, and I go, right, I want to go deeper. I want to see if I can get a head start on everyone else on this. And again, we're hypothetical, just bear that in mind. But I ask this question. I say, okay, are there any other stocks that might be closely aligned to Roku that I could watch as a potential indicator that Roku will do well? So see what I'm doing here. I'm identifying Roku as a potential momentum play or momentum ignition play or potential kind of bid coming in. I've got a loose rising tide from maybe the Fed and maybe their policy, and now as the Nasdaq's rising, fine. I also know that earnings is coming up, so maybe I have to bear that in mind. I don't want to hold over earnings, or if I do, I make my own choice on that. Maybe there's a bid coming up to earnings. Maybe I can play after, or maybe I'm happy to hold over earnings. You understand, name of the game with that. And ask for other stocks, and it says, here you go. Here's some stocks closely aligned: Netflix, Amazon, Google, Disney, the Trade Desk. Not interested in the top four. Too big. Meh. Not that bothered. The Trade Desk. Okay. Let me ask it some more and say, okay, any smaller stocks more aligned with Roku, a supplier, a customer. I start to prompt it. Notice how with ChatGPT we nudge it in the right direction. We ask it questions, and the objective here that I'm trying to achieve is to build a little what I call Roku watch list. And these are going to be stocks that I could watch that are perhaps going to help me trade Roku. And it says suppliers here, gives some suppliers, some partners, customers, other potential stocks, and gives a reason why. Now, again, I need to go and verify this information for myself. If I was genuinely doing this and I was genuinely coming up with a trade idea and a trade theme, I need to go off and double check all this stuff. But you can see now how I can create a Roku watch list, and with 30 minutes of work, with 40 minutes, not even that, I've now come up with a a very nice way to monitor potentially what Roku's doing. Now I can then go off and I can say, when are the earnings calls for these? um I can kind of go down a rabbit hole, and I can be much more prepared. And something I think is key about preparation, and like I say, this workflow is maybe different to what you're used to. There's something about preparing and being prepared that actually gives you way more advantage and is so valuable, even if the preparation actually isn't that valuable, right? So if you come up with a trading plan, an idea, and you're well prepared, you come in, the market does something differently, and you adjust, adapt, often you trade that much better than just coming in and being open-minded. And I'm not saying you should be closed-minded. Remember, that's a bad choice of words, but you get the idea. Like, being prepared. If you talk to any guy in the military, or you listen to any kind of podcast or interview with special forces or any of these type of guys, the preparation they put in is exceptional, and they kind of go through the routine of what could go wrong. Okay, what happens if we breach this door? What could go wrong here? Could we have misjudged how many men are at this facility, at this compound? What happens if a Humvee breaks down, or a helicopter breaks down, or a man gets injured, or what happens if they go through all these different things. In actual fact, when they're going into that combat environment, the world changes, right? Things are very different. But the fact that they've planned means that they feel more prepared. And so, using that analogy, if we look at this, if I now want to kind of trade Roku, I want to be aligned with Roku as an example, I feel like I've got my finger on the pulse. I feel like I've done more research and I'm ahead of the curve than anyone else in that environment, unless they're paid to do it by Goldman or by JP Morgan, right? I feel like, okay, I understand what I'm doing here. And so if I now, this is the key part, I've done this kind of catalyst based work, fundamental based work. Maybe I'm monitoring some of the suppliers and seeing if they're catching a bid, seeing if they've got blowout earnings, etc. Now I fold in my traditional technical, that you're a technical trader, and I'm assuming your technical plays, your setups, your strategies, your filters, your triggers, your patterns that you like to deploy, and you're deploying them in the right environment. So rather than now deploying them where everyone else is deploying them, you're saying, hey, I'm going to deploy that momentum ignition candle pullback trade here. I'm going to deploy the opening range breakout trade on a gap higher here. I'm going to deploy this, whatever strategy you like to trade, here in this area, because I've done all this work. I've used ChatGPT to support me. I've done all the digging and all the boring stuff. ChatGPT's done it, and it's kind of given me a few things to look at if the market starts doing X or Y. And bearing in mind, you could flip this on its head and say, we're going to do it in a moment with another example, completely different example. What would happen if the Fed changed policy, right? Now I might now go and find a weaker stock that I want to get short on. You can see how you can really, just be prepared constantly. And even if you said, I'm not interested in trading stocks, you're a currency trader, you trade Forex, you might say, hey, just point me in direction of pairs that could be affected by this. And actually, in a moment, you'll see a really good example of exactly that, of a big theme that if it changes, where do we go to maybe take a trade idea from that? Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. We built this Roku watch list, and now we can kind of be much more prepared for the trade. Okay, so the second kind of theme I wanted to look at is, again, I'm picking these out because I think these are fun to run through and fun ideas to use ChatGPT to help us workshop stuff. So this is a fun one. Nothing fun about it, but obesity and diabetes. Did you think that we were coming on to the call today? You would be talking about this. So you'll see where I'm going with this and some of the trade ideas we might generate from this and how ChatGPT helps us work through this problem. And why I like this and think it's fun is because I like solving puzzles, right? Of course, trader, right? Who doesn't like solving puzzles? And this using ChatGPT helps. If you like trading, you probably like business. If you like business, you probably like thinking about profitability. You're probably out and about. You see something. Oh, the queue at Greg's is way bigger than normal. Bring up Greg's stock. Oh, WH Smith's for whatever it is, right? If you're in the UK, you kind of think, oh, everyone's canceling Netflix subscription. Should I go short Netflix? You start to think this, and ChatGPT can help you brainstorm through these ideas, these lived examples, these experiences, and you maybe go, oh, nothing's come of it, right? But actually, maybe it is. A really wild example for me was many years ago. I was at this holiday park. It's called Center Parks. You know of it? It's like a holiday park thing. You go there and you swim in and blah blah blah. Right? It's a family type thing. And first time I started noticing everyone wearing super dry. I was like, super dry. Never heard of it. That's cool jackets. That's interesting. Everyone's wearing these bloody jackets. And I remember like punching up the stock and going, to stock sitting there doing nothing. I didn't really do anything about it. And actually, the stock rocketed over the subsequent years. And not to say I would have invested in the company, but it was definitely in play vehicle to trade. It's now come back. I think it's been delisted actually. So it's done this and this. But the point is okay, that was a very simple thing. I see people wearing super dry. I'm gonna look at super dry. Maybe that hasn't been discovered by the market yet. Maybe there's a bit of a lag, and the earnings have yet to kind of show the true popularity of the product. Rare, but that's the sort of thing. But what we're doing now is we're kind of thinking of different ways to take advantage of a trend or a changing trend or something. And one of the big trends at the moment is obesity and diabetes, right? Like it or not. And I'm not here to kind of go off on any random thing about this. I'm here to kind of find trade ideas. Okay, so away from the normal trade ideas. So let's use ChatGPT to help us work through this idea: obesity, diabetes, production of insulin, that type of thing. So we know there's a population, UK, US, across Europe, weight management and diabetes is becoming an issue. It's not new. We know this has been going on for a while. And these recent GLP drugs have boomed. Yeah, like Ozempic, made by Novo Nordisk, which is like a mad, crazy $700 billion company that's bigger than Visa, it's bigger than Walmart, it's bigger than JP Morgan. I think it's about 12th in the world. Then that's basically down to these anti-obesity drugs. They've found a solution, whatever you think of these things, that people are taking, and there's a boom in it, and they're kind of developing more, and something to do with the way it disrupts your hormone flow. I'm not a pharmacist and wouldn't want to be, but the point is that's a boom, right? That's a trend that's rising, and there's a company called Novo Nordisk who has found a solution for that. Okay, so let's kind of workshop some ideas around this, because this is a big trend, and if it shifts or if it doesn't shift or if it accelerates, I want to be ready, right? And just like we're going through and thinking through maybe the trend with the Fed and the trend with the bullish market in the bullish kind of demand that we're coming in for tech stocks. Let me think through some ideas here. And again, just reminding you that maybe you don't go, oh well, I'm going to now invest in this bizarre insulin production company, but as a trader, you're now prepared. And the idea is that we do this work to prepare ourselves, and again, build a watch list. You can macabrely call it the obesity watch list if you want, but you have a plan. And let's work through this. Okay, so I've gone ahead of myself. I knew this slide was coming. You'll know what the big money's looking at. That's a good way of putting it. So skip to the bottom of that slide. Know what big money's looking at, and what's important allows you to be well prepared. And even if you're a day trader, you're prepared. And you go, that company, if this happens and that happens, will be in play. And I'm going to be the damn one of the first to get in there and be positioned for that because I've got a strategy that helps me manage my risk. I've got a technical setup I can fold into this, and now I'm prepared for it. Here's my list of stuff. All right, so let's go back to the process. Imagine you're a hedge fund manager looking for a trade idea. I'm kind of folding into these formulas, and you read there's a growing number of diabetics in the UK and a shortage of insulin. So the reason I didn't just go the broad obesity thing is, um, I kind of know that this is a thing, right? There's a shortage of insulin. There's a shortage of some of these GLP drugs as well. So I kind of wanted to guide it down the path of, well, let me come with something reasonably interesting for me. Let's make it a bit more fun, right? And so it comes up and it says, you can invest in pharmaceutical companies producing insulin. Boring, everyone knows about that. You can invest in supply chain solutions, biotech innovation, healthcare services, ETFs and healthcare funds, geographic diversification, short opportunities. All right. And it goes through, and I say two is interesting because I think, okay, you knowing, having seen stocks, catch bids before, very often the stocks that catch bid, especially when we had that cannabis boom, when we had like Tilray and stuff just ripping, the stocks that kind of were a little bit more diversified were a little bit more of a better play, in my opinion, because they weren't just 100% on that trend. They were kind of diversified a bit. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, supply chain solutions, cold logistics, that type of stuff, that sounds cool. So two's interesting. What are the supply chains? And it's a supply chain for insulin is complex, blah, 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 blah. And it goes through and says raw material sourcing, manufacturing, purification, formulation, packaging, distribution, regulatory compliance, retail, and administration. And then it says investment opportunities, biotech firms, logistic companies. And this catches my eye, particularly those with capabilities in the cold chain logistics, which is crucial for insulin, packaging technology providers, healthcare providers. And I say to it, and going additional questions, can you name some logistic companies that specialize in cold chain logistics? See where I'm going now. I'm trying to go through. It gives me a big list, which I didn't bother putting up here. And I said, 1, 2, and 3 listed. And it says, yes. And it said, these 3 companies, Resource Bergen, McKesson, I'm pronouncing it correctly, Cardinal Health are all listed. And so I then go and I see, okay, I realize that Pepperstone offer MCK. That's good, big company, right? And now what I want to do is I want to kind of workshop through ideas for this. I might necessarily not want to trade this vehicle, but you see what we did with Roku. We started with that, and then we went off and we found what we thought maybe is something that's not yet discovered, something we could be ahead of the curve on, something where we can swim in a smaller pond and maybe have a bigger impact than trying to trade some of the bigger stuff. But anyway, ChatGPT is very good at summarizing things. I go to the website like I did with Roku. I download the earnings release. I chuck it in, and it says, I say this: imagine you are a researcher for a hedge fund. Look at this earnings release and summarize its contents. Give me a bullish case, a bearish case, and this is key. This is key. I've done this with a few things, and I couldn't cover all of it in this workshop, but I've done this personally with a few things, and it's a really, really good thing to ask it. Remember, I said about unusual? That's a really good keyword to use. This is a really good keyword. Identify anything you think might be significant that others have missed. That is such a great find. Works so well. So, I did this on the other day with, I don't know if it's in your manual actually, you've got, maybe I shared that one, but I did this the other day. I don't remember the company I was doing it with now. Anyway, uploaded it and I asked it this, and it said something like, it was mentioned about this court case filing and la la la. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And I've done this a few times, and it's come up with things that actually maybe have not been talked about in the news, but when it goes through the transcript of an earnings call, especially a transcript of an earnings call, I'll ask it and I'll say, hey, what was mentioned that might have been missed, and I've directed ChatGPT to look for something that maybe was glossed over. So maybe the CEO or CFO was talking, and he said this and this, and then it kind of off the cuff he went, "Oh yeah, and we're really worried about that court case or whatever it is." I'm making stuff up. I'm sure he wouldn't say that because everyone would go, "Oh," but You get the idea. And that's how we then go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Maybe there's a tradable opportunity there. All right, so give me a bullish case, give me a bearish case, and identify anything you think might be significant that others have missed. Take nothing away from today. Apart from that, that's beautiful. Okay, overlooked, and I kind of get rid of all the rubbish that it spits out because I'm trying to find the useful stuff to share with you. Number one, I'm trying to find the stuff that I think is going to generate some alpha. Number two, so overlook significant details, impact of Rite Aid bankruptcy, investments in capital expenditures, blah, 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 blah. And I say, okay, so, okay, summary of what we're doing, because this seems a little bit almost pointless now, but we're not the workflow of we've recognized a bigger trend with our observation with our eyes. We've said, okay, help me ChatGPT work through this, come up with some ideas, got rid of the kind of the few that haven't really caught our fancy, find one that we think might be valuable in the cold chain logistics. And now we're digging in like we did before, using ChatGPT to summarize some things on the PDF. But this time we're saying, hey, what have we missed? Where the surprise could come from. And it says here the biggest surprise could come from this resolution of Rite Aid bankruptcy. Now, I won't trade this. It's not for me, but you might. And you might say, hey, add MCK to a watch list and set some alert on news. You can set it on Google News. I think you can set it on there's other tools out there that have the keyword maybe Rite Aid or bank, whatever it is, so that you're alerted. Okay, now maybe we're fishing in a bigger pond here because this is a big company. I get it. But you see the process. You see how now we know what's important. What is important? Well, the resolution of Rite Aid bankruptcy. I ain't got a clue about this company. No idea. Not a Scooby-Doo about what this company did, does, anything about it. But within a few minutes, I now know that that is impactful to its share price. And that's going to create demand or supply, depending on which way it goes. Now I'm much interested. Like, I don't care really what it does and how it does it and how many trucks it's got and how much money it's making. I just care about the chart. I just care about the supply demand imbalance. I just care about if I can get a little chunk out of that. That's my job. And so when I see this, I now have other ways to maybe divert my attention away from perhaps the broader indices, the broader currency pairs. I can it's not as hard. Before, if you were being a specialist in some other area, you had to be very, very knowledgeable about the area, right? You had to know this stuff. And to know this stuff, you had to have been on the earnings call. You have to be knee deep in this company to understand it, which is why they have analysts on these various sectors, and they have analysts covering these stocks, and they know them, right? And they send these reports out to their clients and etc. in the position accordingly. You'd have to have done that if you want to specialize in this. But now with ChatGPT, we can very quickly run through various different things and say, hey, there might be a tradable opportunity there. And let me just kind of forward pace how this might play out. And again, this might not be, I get this, right? But imagine you're a trader. You're agnostic about the market. You just like to trade supply, demand, and balance. You just like to trade stuff that's in play. Just imagine that for a second. You stick MCK on your watch list, Pepperstone offer it. Great. You're happy with that. Good. You stick it there. Then you see that it's gapped up 9%, right? Okay, hypothetically. And you scan the news quickly and it says resolution of Rite Aid bankruptcy, whatever it says, something's bullish, a favorable resolution, right? And you go, okay, let's say it's gapped up 3%, right? And it's gapped up. You see, once it gapped up, you see that. Because you've done this legwork beforehand, you know that this is a very key aspect to the earnings last time. And you know that all eyes are on this. So if you saw it up just 3%, and again, I'm really being really hypothetical here and making things up, you might say, okay, if I see a technical trigger long, I'm going to trade that because I already know the background to this. I already know this is reasonably bullish. This maybe 3% is underdone. That's your decision to make as a trader. But when you start to layer in technical patterns and you start to layer in that into what you maybe already had an edge there, it starts to become a bit more interesting, right? So you can see how this theoretical thing could play out. And appreciate this is just one stock and blah, blah, but ChatGPT is really, really, really shortcutted this whole process now. And like it or not, guys, big money moves around based on fundamental reasons. they're looking at other stuff that perhaps we don't do, or we're trying to ride the coattails, looking for supply demand imbalance, trying to jump on momentum, trying to fade exhaustion, etc., etc., etc. But actually knowing what is driving that move and what other players are thinking about and why they're positioning the way they are, helps us have more confidence. Okay, so look at the next slide here. So yeah, I chuck in the earnings transcript from last time. I can fast forward this a little bit. This is the earnings call transcript. What are the areas analysts are focused on the most? And it says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Impact of Rite Aid's bankruptcy. And I ask it, what does the CEO say regarding Rite Aid? And it said the CEO didn't say anything. However, the CFO said, la, 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 la. And I can read through all that and maybe come up with ideas and different things. So you can see how that can roll out. Okay, let's go in a different direction. Let's focus on obesity. Oh, lovely, lovely. Let's focus on obesity. The growth of these GLPs, what could benefit and what could lose? My grammar's pretty awful there, but so these glucagon-like peptides, medications, blah blah blah, and you can see I'm going to go through this. You'll see this is I think this kind of gets a bit more interesting, and it comes up with actually a currency trade as well. So potential beneficiaries, and by the way, just as a reminder, if you're kind of tuning out, tuning in, we are workshopping through a kind of observed trend in the real world, and we're trying to now come up with a smarter trade idea from this rather than just the obvious trade idea that maybe like by going long Novo Nordisk or whatever it might be. So potential beneficiaries, pharmaceutical companies. It does mention Novo Nordisk. Is it Novo Nordisk? Novo Nordisk? Again, I have to ask a Dane how to pronounce that correctly. Eli Lilly, blah, blah, blah. Healthcare providers, pharmaceutical distributors, patients, healthcare technology, weight management industries. Okay, so that's starting to and again, I want to think of ideas of if this could continue, where can I focus? Maybe this already run its course, or if it stops, what could happen? So potential losers, and it says here, manager of less effective treatments, payers and insurers, generic medication markets, traditional weight loss industries. Okay, so these guys could lose big if these GLP medications, continue to improve and people continue to take them. Again, whatever your stance is on this, it doesn't matter. We're looking at it from traders' perspective. Then companies that actually go through traditional weight loss, which is a side note, personal perspective, I think that's the way to lose weight, right? You eat less, you exercise more. But hey, leave that out for now. If people are taking these GLPs and they're working for them, a lot of people aren't going to kind of spend money going to some of these companies that help them lose weight traditional way. Okay, so I now want to, and my thinking here is, okay, so if, I start off by thinking, what are the losers? Because I'm going to flip this on its head in a moment, and you'll see why. So I say, what are some listed stocks that are potential losers based on this boom in the GLPs, right? Which is the anti-obesity stuff that's kind of helping obesity and diabetes as well, right? That's a separate thing, and yeah, fine. But we're focusing on the obesity perspective here because we know it's an issue. We know people are trying to solve that problem. Is this this solving the problem? Manufacturers of alternative diabetes treatments. I'm not really focused on that. I want the obesity side of it. Generic pharmaceutical companies, traditional weight loss companies. That just piques my interest a little bit. Okay. Companies primarily in the business of non-medical weight management and lifestyle products may face increased competition from GLP-1 medications that provide clinically proven weight loss benefits. Examples include Weight Watchers International, formerly Weight Watchers, formerly Weight Watchers, blah, blah, blah. We know what Weight Watchers is all about. Oprah Winfrey was on it. That had a big bid for a while, many years ago, and now it's getting battered. And I've said to you, this type of chart seduces me. I like this type of thing. And not to go short, the short's done. But maybe there's a trade here. So let's explore. So what about trade ideas? Pause that for a moment. What about trade ideas that are unusual and might not have been considered? Key word, unusual, not been looked at, been overlooked. This really gives you some good answers. And it comes up with a few things. Medical device companies specializing in obesity and diabetes management, healthcare IT, food and beverage companies focused on health and wellness, fitness and health apps, cannabis and CBD companies, waste management companies. Did you know there's a big business in like getting rid of syringes and stuff? Who knew? Who knew? Anyway, fitness and health apps. And bearing in mind, let me just make sure. Okay, yeah. So fitness and health apps. So now Peloton comes up, and Peloton is a very, very beaten down chart. So I'm going to summarize what we've gone through in a moment, but just having in mind Weight Watchers, Peloton, okay? Um, and Pepperstone offer Peloton, and they sure need a turnaround catalyst. So just like we did before, I'm just with a little bit of Roku, not quite the same as Peloton. Peloton's pretty bad shape. So my thinking is this, and maybe there's some slides on this, I might be jumping ahead. These GLPs are working for people, fine. Novo Nordisk is rallying and 13th most valuable company in the world, great. But I start to think to myself, okay, so Peloton's really on the brunt of this. They're already battered because of the COVID boom. They came down and blah, blah, blah. There's other reasons, but this is not helping Peloton, right? You know, if people are able to lose weight, and there's some people, of course, who just enjoy exercising. I'm one of them. Maybe you are too. But people might not buy a Peloton now because they need to lose weight. They might just get a jab and stick it in them and they job done. However, I start to think, okay, so now I'm workshopping through these ideas. I start to think, well, actually, you know, what happens if Novo Nordisk miss their earnings? What happens if there's a problem with these GLPs? What happens if, you know, we have to go back to traditional methods? Would Peloton catch a bid? Would Peloton be a big recovery story? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, it's kind of have a crystal ball, but I now can create a focus point and say, actually, you know what? If I see something negative, I know that this may be positively effective. I don't say maybe people haven't seen this. I admit this is a little bit loose, but you can see how you kind of work through these different ideas. So I asked this, say, okay, let's flip it around. If GLP use turns out to be a problem, apart from the obvious short player Novo Nordisk, spelled it wrong, but ChatGPT is pretty good at working me out by now. What else could be a good trade idea? Okay. And it says traditional weight management programs like Weight Watchers. And it also says this currency valuation. Negative impacts on one of Denmark's largest exporters could weaken investor confidence in the Danish economy, potentially leading to a depreciation of the Danish kroner. Currency movements could be influenced by changes in foreign direct investment flows and shifts in trade balances. This is very, very loose and very, very. There's a lot to fall into play here, but you can see how ChatGPT has basically said, listen, if Novo Nordisk miss, or if there's a big problem with them, and let's hope there isn't, right? Because a lot of people take these things, but imagine if there is, and you're watching that, it's in your watch list, and maybe you don't trade stocks. Maybe you're not interested in kind of buying a stock that's beaten down. Maybe you're not interested in playing that game, but maybe you put Danish kroner on your watch list, and maybe if the impact is bad enough, you say actually, and you obviously ask more questions on this and kind of dig through this even more, but you then go, well, actually, you know, I think Danish kroner is going to get hit because Novo Nordisk, crazy as it sounds, is giving this much revenue to the government via taxes and jobs and blah blah blah, whatever it might be. So actually, if they're in trouble, it has to be something big. I appreciate this, and we're just kind of thinking through ideas. Maybe I then start to trade in Danish kroner. Maybe I start to look at kind of shorting some sort of position that involves Danish kroner. Now, hypothetical, don't obviously take this as not advice or anything, but you can see, and the point of this workshop is to really identify how ChatGPT can help you do this. You can really see how you can just keep digging and come up with ideas and around the stuff that's important to you. And I've used two broad examples here of, you know, the Fed and how, you know, this bullish undertone with the Qs and whether that's going to continue or not, who knows. And I've kind of got a real world experience or trend that you're observing, like, you know, a lot of people are very obese, these GLPs and stuff. And we've seen, you know, probably seen lots of articles about it. How can I work through and come up with a trade idea from that? Now, you might be like, well, this is for investors only. This is for people who are swing trading. Well, maybe. But I think it's also valid if you peel in and layer in technical type setups as a day trader, as a swing trader, to already know what's driving this type of stuff. Okay. So finally, as we go through this, I've got a really good example in a moment of downloading a trading strategy white paper and kind of going through that. So very quickly, some listed stocks that are potentially losers, blah, 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 goes through all this. Weight Watchers International, very, very battered. So I can kind of say, okay, maybe if there's a stock, if there's a problem with these GLPs, if Novo Nordisk misses, could I trade Danish kroner? Maybe I'd have to do some research on that. Could I go to Weight Watchers? Could I go to Peloton? they're loose, but you see the idea. I have to do more about it, but you see the idea. Okay, so this is a fun one. Let's finish off by uploading a trading strategy white paper and interrogating it. So I'm not sure if I did this in depth or not, but this is, I think it's more interesting, or not more interesting. I like this other stuff, right? It's cool, but this might be more valuable immediately for you. So if you go to ssrn.com and search for trading strategies, these are white papers, right? And these are white papers, a fancy name for a PDF, basically, some research paper that's presented to you in a perhaps more formal and eloquent manner than a dude with a YouTube video or a blog post, right? So, and they can be quite heavy. So if you go to ssrn.com, search for trading strategies, and I found one here. It's 30 pages long, which isn't too long. Some of them are a couple of hundred pages. And this one says the power of price action reading by these guys. Okay, I don't know anything about it. I'm kind of not endorsing it. La, la, la. I'm not saying this is going to be really useful and be valuable, but it's kind of it's research that's actually gone past the norm of just maybe looking at a chart and sharing with somebody. So I'm giving it some sort of credence. I say, here's a white paper on the power of price action reading. Can you read it? Summarize the main points, please. Of course. Upload the white paper. It's very jolly today. I upload it, and it goes through and gives me kind of some of the basic bullet points: stock gaps, role of trader intuition, research objective, methodology findings, etc. I want it to summarize stuff. So I say, I want to find strategies first, and then I want to summarize them. So I say, and this is again, we're kind of using the PDF, ChatGPT's ability to really summarize and distill down valuable info without us having to read through. And I appreciate 30 pages isn't a lot, but some of these are really hefty. So anyway, are any specific strategies suggested? 5-minute ORB, okay. And then it comes up with adding to the ORB and adding a trading stop with 4 profit targets. So it's kind of the opening range plus a trading plus 4 targets, micromanagement technique, discretionary gap selection, integration of discretionary judgment. All right, give me some rules, man. What does it say? So what does it say the optimal rules for the 5-minute ORB? And it says, here's the entry rule. Okay, so now I'm digging, right? I'm taking this white paper, and maybe this is something that you can consider for strategy generation, but never ever trade something based on ChatGPT or white paper. You've got to do your own testing, your own research. There's those risk rules that you have to deploy. Of course, you know this, but it helps you come up with ideas, right? And especially if someone's maybe done all the testing already and come up with this research, you can kind of maybe fast track your own research process. So it says entry rule. It's a 5-minute ORB basically. Trade on the high. The first candle is broken to the long side, and a stop loss is placed 1 cent below the first 5-minute candle. Tight stop loss is intended to minimize losses. Blah blah. Hold for 30 days. That's not right. When I dug in, and again, there's an error here because I was like, it's not 30 days. We're not talking about 30 days hold. Or stop is hit. If you 5-minute stop for 30 days, that's a big R to RVR trade. So ChatGPT often gets things wrong. You have to understand the context and stuff as well, right? So it says hold the trade, have a trading stop, profit target. These rules and modifications aim to optimize the opening range breakout strategy by balancing the need for immediate momentum capture with risk management. Blah 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 blah. It can waffle on a bit, right? So I then say I like to I like to trade a filters and triggers process. So I have a filter that kind of says, okay, this is now interesting to trade. I'm a trending environment if I'm trying to trade pullbacks or mean reversion around the VWAP, or I'm in a range, prior days range if I'm trading mean reversion or that type of thing, right? And that's a filter that I need to be ticked before I then deploy a specific strategy. So I kind of say, hey, any filters discussed when to consider taking the ORB? And it says stock behavior price gap, volume conditions, magnitude of the gap, market sentiment and news, technical position, historical performance. Okay, so, all right. Now, this is interesting. You probably could read this, and if you look at the replay, maybe you kind of dig into this, or maybe you ask your own stuff for ChatGPT. But let me move on to something that's a little bit more exciting. So it's done all this, and now I'm going to be very specific with it. And this is the beauty of ChatGPT, right? You're the head trader at a day trading firm, tasked with coming up with specific and clear trading strategy rules for other traders to follow. Give it some context, the persona starts to give it some guardrails. Looking at that ORB trade, how would you present that strategy? Think in terms of filters, i.e., what context needs to be present, and triggers, what rules I need to execute the trade. Then also consider risk management rules. So how I like to think is the filter, the context, and the trigger. I'm not going to take a trade that hasn't passed the filter, but I'm also not going to take a trade that's passed the filter that hasn't got the trigger. Let me think of a kind of broad example that you get. Okay, so let's say I'm buying a pullback, right? Kind of a very, very plain strategy that we can all deploy. And maybe my trigger for buying a pullback is to have a support level that is touched twice and I get a pin bar through it the second time. Just a simple, a close above, pin bar through. That's my trigger. So my trigger is the pin bar through, close above. The filter might be I need to see an opening drive of at least 100 points, 150 points, whatever market I'm trading. I need to also see price above the prior high. I need to also know that there's not data coming up later in the afternoon. Very, very broadly. If those filters are matched, then I might look for a pullback buy and I might look for context like it doesn't pull back more than 20% of the move. It finds some support, volume starts to dry up. And my trigger would be the time when I actually pull the trigger and place a trade would be if I saw a pin bar coming through and closing above. Simple idea, simple kind of hypothetical example there, but that would be how I think about things in terms of filters and triggers. So I kind of push the ChatGPT. I say, hey, think in terms of this, what context needs to be present, and what rules do you need to actually execute the trade? Okay, so it comes with some really good kind of context and execution rules, and it kind of says, hey, filters are context, and that's correct. Triggers are execution rules, that's correct. And it also asks it to come up with some risk management ideas. And so it says, hey, here's the risk management protocols. So now this is where we think about what we've done here. We've gone to a website that does trading white papers in general. We've filtered out for trading strategies. Just found one we think is interesting. We've dumped into ChatGPT. We've asked it to summarize it. We might discard it. We don't like it. We can put another one in. We found one we reasonably like. And now we've gone down, 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 narrowed our guidance and said, okay, give me some kind of filters. And it's actually given me some specific things that I might want to filter for. Now, this is stocks. I know everyone trades stocks. I get it. But you can see there's other stuff on there with Forex, other stuff in there with commodities. But it says, okay, only consider stocks with a pre-market volume exceeding 200,000 shares. It's easily screenable for now. The stock must open at least 6% higher than the previous day's close. Trade during an overall bullish theme where the S&P 500 is up. So maybe you could add a filter for the moving average, the prices above 20 period, 50 period, whatever, 100 period, if you're okay with that. Sector performance, you could add some sort of criteria of that. And this is interesting, right? And something you might not have thought of if you're trading this, trading the ORB. Prefer stocks that have not gapped significantly in the past 5 trading days to avoid late entries in momentum cycles. That's a nice, less obvious filter, but now you say it, that's very good because I don't want to be trading exhaustion. If it gaps up again, because it says, one of the criteria here is the stock must open at least 6% higher. If it's been gapping up and moving, if I'm honest, I'm looking for an exhaustion play. That definitely not buying that thing. So this is a really good filter. And again, this is why ChatGPT is so nice. And I could also dig into that a bit more if I wanted. Anyway, the execution rules of this, simple ORB, 5-minute ORB. Enter a long position if price breaks above the high of the first 5-minute candle. Execute trades in the first hour. I'm trading to capture momentum from the overnight news or events. So I only want to trade it in that first hour. That seems a bit broad to me. If I was trading a 5-minute ORB, there's no way to wait an hour, but it's giving you some ideas and you can obviously adjust it to suit you. Okay, so then it comes up with risk management. So the point is now it's got all the rules and I've got a brand fresh new trading strategy. If I want it, again, please go and check it. Please go and double, make sure this is the right thing for you. We're not trading based on this. It can make errors. We've seen it make errors. I don't want to state that, but it now says, okay, here's your stop loss. Where you put either 1% below your entry price or below the first 5-minute candles. Gives you 2 options of that, whichever is less. Great. And it even gives you profit targets and says, right, first target, sell 50% of position at 1% gain, sell 25% position at 2% gain, allow the last quarter to run with a 5-minute trading stop. It doesn't say what, or 5-minute EMA. I don't know what, I guess it was that going to be a 5 period or 1. I know we maybe have to ask a little bit more about that. Seems a bit tight to me, but fine. Okay. Position size, blah, blah, daily loss limit, fines, come up with different ideas for that. It's up to you to decide, trade review. And it gives you an example walkthrough. So now I would want to test this. And the beauty of ChatGPT is we can go back to what we covered last week and we can maybe download some data and test this. We can maybe ask it to interrogate the PDF and say, are there any results and back testing results that we can look at to really dig into the efficacy of this strategy, etc. And it gives an example walkthrough of, we're filtering for this, we're looking for this. It's how we go trade to trade. It's how we get into the trade. This is the scaling first position, second target, final target, stop loss, etc. There's a ready-made strategy there. Whether it's going to be effective or not is up to you to decide. But on the face of it, again, you've got to use the kind of discretionary litmus test. That seems like a reasonable thing. And again, this is specific to stocks, of course. But if you found something that was a white paper on Forex, and there are some on there, if you found some on indices or commodities, the process would be the same. You chuck it into ChatGPT and you say to it, hey, this is it. Can you kind of distill it down? Can you give me the rules? Can you give me the backdrop, etc., etc.? Just keep asking it questions. And then finally, I said to it, listen, turn that into a well-formatted PDF with checklist. And so I can just download it and have it on my downloads folder if I wanted to. And it goes through the process and outlines how it would do it. And then basically it said, there you go, and it could download it. Now it was quite basic. If I'm honest, it wasn't that good. But you could then, I'm sure if you wanted to, you could say, design it differently. And maybe it's not ready there yet because the image generation is a little bit flaky, but actually it's getting better. And if you wanted to say, hey, spice it up, add it to a box, or maybe you kind of download it to a Google Doc and you kind of add your own context and stuff. But you can see, the process we've gone through here is we've gone from white paper on ssrn.com to actually now our own PDF of a strategy with fixed filters and rules that we can decide to deploy or not. And again, I want to reiterate that we double check, we test, and we kind of make sure everything is exactly as it should be, because ChatGPT makes a ton of mistakes, as we saw. 30-day hold time with a 5-minute stop. Yeah, maybe, but I don't think that's correct. So that's a good process. And that's how we can use ChatGPT to really summarize some of our stuff. A summary before we kind of go through other bits and cap this all off. A Q&A, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat. Very welcome to ask me some questions there. I got a little bit of homework for you for next week, but we uploaded the Fed minutes. We generated a trade idea on Roku, or a sort of watch list to keep an eye on. We created a sympathy play watch list for Roku. We worked through that big trend theme trade idea, with the obesity and diabetes thing. You could do that based on your first world experience. And maybe you're in Tesco in the UK and you're like, man, this is dead. This is normally busy. And then again, it's dead. Or maybe you go in Weatherspoons and it's dead or it's busy. Now, maybe there's an obvious play there. You can see how you could go through and say, actually, this company supplies Tesco. Tesco is losing market share to this, this, and this. Maybe there's a trade on this company, or maybe you get the idea. We analyzed a trading white paper and created our own strategy rule PDF. Okay, before we head off, ladies and gentlemen, if you like, you will have some homework. So think of something you've observed or experienced, just like mentioned there, your real world experience, or as a trend you're kind of interested in, even if it's a big trend like the one we covered. We can ask ChatGPT to really go down and kind of find something that actually might be actionable. And maybe you want to stick with Forex. Maybe you want to stick with commodities. Maybe you just want to play around with it and see. Yeah. Use ChatGPT to help you think through that idea, using the process of stuff we've learned from week 1, the formula, guiding it, and then the key, like little magic. I love that little phrase of just find me something unusual, find me something that's not been discovered. You ask it to kind of go off the beaten track. Don't give me the stock answer, ChatGPT. Go wild, man. Find me something really interesting and then justify it. And if it says, wheat futures, well, why? And it says, because this and this, you go, nah. Or you go, this and this. Yeah, okay. And then you say, well, how could I try? You get the idea. It really helps you think through stuff that might not be in your wheelhouse. And that's the beauty of this tool, even though it can get stuff wrong a lot. So ask questions, dig into the answers, and just practice uploading PDFs and documents, interrogating them. If you've got a big article, cut and paste it, chuck it in, say, summarize the article for me. Give me 5 bullets. Very often I might do that. Someone's got a really long macro piece on something that, really maybe quite dull or not something I'm interested in. but I really respect the author. I cut and paste it. I put in a chat GPT and I say, hey, give me the 5 most important takeaways from this article. Boom, 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 boom. Right. Now, do I want to dig deeper? I can do, but otherwise I can go, right, fine, I can move on. Just like we're uploading those PDFs when we're downloading the PDFs for investor relations on websites, downloading Fed minutes, et cetera, et cetera. Just getting ChatGPT to do all the legwork for you, is super, super useful. Okay, so if you've got any questions, stick them in. I'll get to it now. Otherwise, week 4, we have trade performance analysis with ChatGPT. So uploading date, this is a good one. If you're an active trader, you'll love this. Swing trader, day trader, just a trader who likes to trade and get involved in the markets. We're going to upload some execution data into ChatGPT, so like a journal blotter or CSV file or anything like this. If you're MT4, if you're wherever you're trading, download directly from Pepperstone, whatever it is, right? Analyze the trade performance and the questions to ask to extract the best patterns and outliers from it. So in other words, without giving too much away, we're going to kind of really ask really good questions to help us make trade execution adjustments and ways that we can adjust and adapt. Do we want to hold our trades a little bit longer? ChatGPT will help us. What could we do to really improve our P&L this month? ChatGPT will help us based on history. Are my stops effective enough? ChatGPT will help us. And using ChatGPT to help us get that low-hanging fruit, which very often is it's just there for us. It's just making these little tweaks. Story very, very briefly, let you go. Many, many years ago, kind of remember my first 5 years of trading, I was trading Dow futures, right? Dow futures. And I remember trading this specific strategy and I was using a kind of 10-point stop. I think it was 10-point stop. And that was well, back then it was quite big. It seems ridiculous now. That was very, very different on 10,000. But I was using a 10-point stop and I was just getting stopped. And I thought, this is the effective strategy. Why is it not working? What's not working with it? And I ended up going back and I was analyzing all my trades and looking, and I basically discovered with manual work that all I need to do was widen the stop by a couple of points. 12-point stop, and that strategy would have been profitable if I'd have traded like that on the trades I'd done. And so moving forward, I used a slightly wider stop, and it started to fall into place. Now I could have adjusted that with an improved entry, of course, but the reason I tell you that story is that was a lot of legwork, a weekend digging into stuff, downloading charts, doing this, doing that, looking at performance. Now we can ChatGPT, is going to help us do something like that or similar type of thing. Get the analysis in there. Maybe we cross-check it with market data. We're going to go into some cool stuff with that next week. And then a trade plan generation. Of course, finally, please make sure you understand the risks, guys. Not here to give you advice. You know this already. And then check out Pepperstone. Obviously, I think you're already clients of Pepperstone. Maybe let's check out Traders Mastermind as well. That's my company. If you join the daily email, you get an email from me a day, which I think you'll find valuable, occasionally entertaining, and all that other good stuff. All right. Thank you very much for joining me, ladies and gents. Have we got any questions? Chris has just said it's likely that funds will be using the LLMs like GPT to summarize large documents, maybe more than using it as a quant. If this is the case, we'll be seeing what they're seeing at the moment. Yeah, good point, Chris. You know what? I think one final thing on that. I think that yes, I know that some of these big companies are using kind of ChatGPT and all these LLMs to summarize stuff, but I think there's often a bit of a lag time. And being up to speed with using these tools is going to help us when there's big leaps forward. ChatGPT 5 or whatever it is. What's the other one? Star something. I can't remember what the name of it is. I don't even know it's legitimate anymore. Maybe that's something to ask Maxim on week 5. When we have these big leaps and we can connect to the data and you can connect to trading platforms, all this type of stuff, we'll be ahead of the curve and be familiar and comfortable with it so that when there's a big edge there, while everyone else is creaking and having meetings and trying to work out how to deploy it, we can deploy it fast. And that's always been the edge of a retail trader, I think, anyway. Fast deployment of edges. And going back to kind of the last week, that was the whole point. You spot something, you test it very, very quickly, not necessarily in a quant way of going right back for 20 years, but you test and say, last couple of weeks, has this theme been true? We've always caught a bit at this time. Yes, we have. Do I want to trade it? Yes or no? And there's very, very quickly where you can kind of deploy that based on some short-term ideas and research. All right, ladies and gents, we shall call it a day there. Thank you so much for your attendance. We shall be back same time next week, Monday at 7 p.m. Week 4, we're going to talk about trade performance analysis with Monsieur ChatGPT. Thank you so much. Take care, ladies and gents. Bye bye.